The A players see other people as collaborators, and the B and the C players see them as competition.
Andrew Jackson, tech leader, broker.
And now the successful founder of Allies of Finance.
I was working with the same people who I'd left working with 3 years ago, but now I was their boss. So now we're not just having a conversation, I'm asking you how you're performing. I'm looking at the metrics you're hitting.
Did you have to go through performance management with any of those folks? AJ, great to have you.
Thank you.
On the show. And for those that may be wondering, AJ is actually a daycare father friend. So AJ and I got to know each other through our kids at daycare together, and we connected whilst the kids were playing in the playground, and found out that we'd actually led really similar careers in the sense of 15, 20 years in the world of software sales, building teams, and both gone off and set up our own businesses. So I've gone for the selling people, and you've gone selling mortgages.
Yep.
So both brokering businesses. But what I thought would be really interesting is to have a chat on the spectrum of hiring, because that's something that we're really passionate about. You've been on that journey of building sales teams, hiring, probably in performance management for big companies, and then you've been a candidate on the market as well.
Yeah, so I started in the UK. So I think now I'm a small business owner. I'm taking all this experience into that. But where I started was over in the UK, classic account management / sales role for a software firm. I went in knowing nothing about it, but I knew that I'd studied business and I could talk to people and build relationships, which was the number one skill I realized you had to have. Now, you can teach the technical skills. What you can't teach are those human skills, the being able to network, talk to people, relate to people, empathy, these kind of things. So I worked for an email marketing / CRM integration software company in the UK.
What was that one called?
It was called Concept.
Concept, okay.
So we specialized in servicing professional service firms, legal, accounting, real estate. It was more of they used it for their internal communications, but also some external. We like to work with them because they desired a high level of service, and we weren't the scale where we could just rinse and repeat, or that we had a brand that people were willing to take even if they didn't need access to somebody. So this was, it's SaaS, but we are going to help you use it because you're not the typical users of SaaS back then. So we're going back 15, 18 years. The idea of sending out an email that went to multiple people and they could get reporting on was completely foreign. So I joined there, and then I helped hire people into the business in the UK.
What year is this?
This is, goodness,
early
2000s.
Okay.
Yeah, early 2000s. Early mid-2000s. And then after a few years, I realized that the challenge with smaller firms is there is a glass ceiling, inevitably, but the opportunity to move down to Australia came about. My old boss from there, she was Aussie, she came back to Australia. She said, come down, we need to restructure the team. So I did. I came down here, and we immediately had to move 2 or 3 people on, and then go about bringing someone from the States who was in the business already and hiring a couple of other people and re-engineering how we worked with the businesses down here. So that was great. But 18 months later, I was like, okay, it's not just a glass ceiling in London, it's a glass ceiling in the company, and I needed a new challenge. So I went and did a couple of different things, took my skills to change management and marketing consultancy. But then after a sabbatical of traveling, found my way back into that role as the country manager down here. So again, that was wearing a different hat. But I think probably the biggest challenge up to then I'd had was I was working with the same people who I'd left working with 3 years ago, but now I was their boss. So that's a really big shift as a manager that you have to get used to. It's like someone described it to me as going the other side of the desk and you can't come back. So now we're not just having a conversation. I'm asking you how you're performing. I'm looking at the metrics you're hitting. I'm looking at, are you the right person for this role, or is there a better role for you? Or is this even the right company for you to be in? What do our clients need?
How did you, I'm going to say, mentally prepare and manage that? Because I've thought about that, and I'm not sure I've had to do that from being a a colleague to a manager, but I've certainly witnessed other people doing it, and it's not easy.
No.
Especially when there's egos and there's personalities involved.
One of the best things I brought to be able to do that was the fact that I naturally have a high degree of empathy. And I'd done the role before, and I'd worked very closely with my manager who was moving out and I was replacing her.
Yeah.
So I saw what was required from like the day-to-day pieces. So I'd say there were a few things that I really had to get a grip on. One was those day-to-day. That was easier. So I didn't let that get in the way. Number two was being able to understand and relate to the people in the team who were previously say just friends. You'd be in the pub with a bit more frequently. But I already knew their personalities. I knew what kind of made them tick, what sort of worker they were, let's say. The third piece was getting one or two good mentors who could help me through this process, who had done that before. I said, now I have to manage them. I have to understand the performance metrics that were there or weren't there and how they're meeting them, what the business needs. And it was I had to be very honest with myself that I can't be the same level of friend with them that I was beforehand. I don't want to lose that, but I am now their manager. So it was more of a mind shift for me. And as soon as I made that, and as long as I wasn't an idiot about how I conducted myself, it was taking them on the journey over a number of months, because it wasn't 1 minute my old boss is there and then she's gone. There was a 3 or 4 month transition where this is happening. I'm stepping into the role. How can we make this work as a team?
Did you have to go through performance management with any of those folks?
I did. I had to, unfortunately, make one of them redundant. That was less performance management, more circumstance of the company. One other person, I had to find a different opportunity for them, which meant I got to move them to the UK. Okay. Again, this was more the business down here didn't have the growth that was happening in the UK and the US, and they were slightly shifting away from multiple industries to legal specific. And that's where the firms are huge, the market need is massive. It was like, well, we'll dial down what we have here, and that meant dialing down headcount. So thankfully no pips or anything there, but definitely changing people's lives drastically. Yeah.
And you went through a period of people management, country manager over the last sort of 15, 20 years. Did you notice any changes in the way in which you hired people and what you look for? Did you notice any changes in the external factors impacting the type of salespeople that you were looking for?
Yeah, one factor was that I learned where to hire people is in terms of the physical location that I needed to interview people in.
Okay.
I spent too long saying, I don't want a small team because I had a small office. I don't want them seeing me pull in every single person for that first round conversation because I didn't have any admin. So if you have the opportunity to utilize someone to do a screening call, do it. Make sure that the process is rock solid so everybody gets the same opportunity and you get the same data back from it. But I didn't have that opportunity, so I'd take everyone to a cafe. And 3 interviews in, I was shaking from caffeine and I was veering away from what I was supposed to be asking them because I thought I had a process, but I didn't have a great process at that time. So that was my first experience of solo hiring. I'd always been involved in the conversation, but not as the lead person. So that was a big challenge. Up to that point.
Where did you go to when you realized that the cafe and the caffeine wasn't the way to go?
I just started bringing them into the office and I brought my team more on board with what was happening, that we need to hire this role and I'm going to have a screening call myself, but I'm much more of a face-to-face person. So I'm going to bring people in. it's going to be the beginning or the end of the day to not be too distracting for us, but just FYI, there will be a number of faces coming in. And they were actually fine with that because I pulled them into the latter stages of the interview. Now, up to that point, I'd never used recruiters because it wasn't in the budget I was allowed to have. So it was just me going about LinkedIn and asking my network for people. They were the two best ways I managed to get candidates to come, using some of the job boards, but really it was let's go to firms and let's go to people and ask, who do you recommend? Who could do this job? But it was a quite straightforward process.
Yeah.
It's like screening call. Are you a decent person? Can you do the job? Can you prove to me you can do the job? And then meet the team. So probably 2 or 3 steps within a matter of a week or something.
Yeah. When I was at Dado, mine was very, very similar as well. So I would typically do an initial meeting in the early days, and then I would, if I liked them, I would take him around the office and say, have a chat with a few of the reps, and I'd leave them to have a chat. And that was, the team would then come back and they'd give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down.
Right.
If they didn't like him or they were unsure, I'd pass.
Yep.
And if they said thumbs up, I'm like, all right, let's go to one more interview or offer letter at that stage. But yeah, I agree. Like getting the team buy-in, particularly in small businesses, is incredibly important. I
think it is. And that was very important when I moved on to the next role. So the larger country manager role I had was at a company, First AML, so anti-money laundering. Again, similar to the email 10, 15 years ago, I went in knowing nothing about the AML industry, but I knew I could build a team, run a team, and I was ready for the next step up.
Yeah.
And there we had a team of, I think, what did we have? I went in and there were 6, and we built it out to 18 over the space of about 9 or 10 months. And that was across a multitude of roles. So we had pre-sales and sales, marketing, onboarding, customer success. And then there were a few people in New Zealand who I also helped hire and manage for a period. So that was, again, a different challenge. I had, to the point earlier, I had support for that who could do the screening calls. We had HR in New Zealand who could manage the Seek, the LinkedIn ads, but it was very much a collaboration. And that's the key thing. Even if you have people helping you, you have to be involved in not detail every step of the process, but you have to know what each step of the process is, and you have to understand what's important at each step. So you know what you're getting from it.
Yeah.
But if it's not working, you can quickly change it, and you can have a really frank conversation and say, like, I've just had 5 candidates. None of them are right. We're doing something wrong. Is it the screening calls? And sometimes it was like, no, we're putting too much emphasis on their experience as opposed to, can they do the job we're asking, even if they are a little greener?
Yeah. When I was at Data, we got to a point where, I would do a lot of the outreach, and then there was a period where we used recruiters. And then once we reached kind of scale and mass, we hired internal talent acquisition. And we hired a girl called Amy, who was just absolutely brilliant. And we were like really compatible and really in sync with what we were looking for. And, I learned through my hiring journey the importance of having that partnership with either your internal or external talent partner is so critical. And if ever Amy would put someone in front of me, like I knew that 9 times out of 10, that would be a fit.
What made her such a good partner for you in that space?
We were like, she completely understood what I was looking for, from a personality perspective, a characteristics, skills, background, cultural fit as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And she would say this person will fit really well in. She understood our business, our model, the sales motion, the sorts of, it's a velocity sales, solution sales model. And if there was someone she would be unsure about, she goes, I'm on the fence with this person, but have a chat and see what you think.
Okay.
I would always have a chat. I would never want to push back because we had that partnership. But I've worked with many externals that just threw stuff against the wall to see what would stick, and it becomes incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, it does. It's a big waste of time. I think the biggest learning I had when I moved into that more senior country manager role was how much time hiring takes out of your day, because you want to get it right. And I think if you really care about who you're bringing in and the team you have and the growth of the business, it does take a bit more time, not necessarily feel longer for the candidate, but you put a little bit more effort in because you want to make the right decision. But it can be a big time suck. And that's something I really learned. You had to prioritize. Like, when am I going to do my interviews? When am I going to review CVs? When are we going to refine the process? When am I going to bring the team in? Because the team have priorities as well during the day. And it can't just be this scattergun approach of, I need you for an interview now, quick. Like, no, we need to like map this out so the business can still run and grow. But we can hire.
It's definitely a delicate balancing act. So I was on the call last night with one of our clients and the CEOs in the UK. We work together in our former lives. But one of the things he said is, it goes, I'm heavily involved in all of our hiring because I'm laser focused on ensuring that we get the absolute right cultural fit people into our business for the stage that we are. We cannot afford to make any hiring mistakes. And it dawned on me that that's actually a really smart way to think. If you outsource, if you think I'm too good as a senior leader to be doing the interviewing, actually it's the other way around. As a senior leader in growth phase, you should actually be doing a lot of the interviews. However, what he's saying to us is, I need a talent partner that can ensure that really truly understand what we're looking for. So I'm not wasting my time. I'm only really meeting really qualified people. Doesn't mean they're all going to get a job, but I don't want to be faffing about with unqualification.
No, I completely agree with that. I think the only thing I tweak there is, and this has been brought to my attention recently, less of a cultural fit, more of a cultural ad. It's like, I want people to make sure that they come in and they work with the team, or I did, and in my new business, I want them to make sure they're part of the team, but I want them to bring like as much of themselves as they are comfortable. I want them to add to everything we're doing. Like, I'm not going to have the perfect culture, and I'm going to probably in some ways clash with other people, or will have different working styles. But if they can bring their own values to the business, and during the interview process, we work out exactly what those are and who they are as a person, I think we all get better as a business. So I looked for that, but I completely agree on the point where I want to be involved, but I can't be looking at rubbish because it's a waste of time.
So you had an incredible career, went from individual contributor to sales manager to country manager, and then came a point where you're on the job market again. In 2023?
So I finished up First AML in 22.
Okay.
I went through a round of redundancy. So I'd made people redundant, and then I was made redundant. This was when we were talking just before, when venture capital money, just the tap turned off. And our firm had to decide, well, what's more important? Is it expanding in the UK, which we'd committed to, or was it keeping me and all of my team in Australia, which still isn't the market it needs to be for regulations? Don't need to get into that. Very frustrating though. And the decision was made, annoying for me, but I can see the sense in it, to extend the cash, keep that burn rate as little as possible, so reduce some headcount in Australia. So I finished up in Oz. I did a contract role, which was a thing I would recommend if anyone is in any industry. You never burn a bridge. You never ever burn a bridge, because you don't know when you need that next gig. And I was out of the job for a week, and then I went straight into a 3-month contract gig. Same wage, office almost next door to each other, working for a good friend, able to help his growing business. But after that, I decided, okay, well, that was just a contract role. I need to go back in. So I was on the other side of the table. I was trying to find work.
And I want to ask you a question. You've gone from being the, so I'm just going to do it again because I hit the mic. I want to ask you a question, because you've gone from being the country manager, building these go-to-market teams and back office teams, to now being on the market and going out to look for a new role. What are some of the almost misconceptions that you had of the candidate hiring pool when you were a candidate versus a hiring manager that was almost an aha moment for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'd say, let's think of the top few, because part of it is the experience as a candidate, and part of it is how an interview process is run, looking at it from, okay, I'm a candidate, but how are they trying to run that interview process to make sure they get the right people? So I never realized how many people are, in theory, going for a job. It's not true. Right? You say, oh, there's 150 applicants. Yeah, well, there's probably only 15 who can actually do the job, but everyone's just throwing their hat in the ring. So the first thing I realized was, how do I cut through that noise? How do I make my CV stand out? And they realize I'm one of the 15 who can do this job. In some cases, standing on my head, because there were times when I was going, well, I need a job, so I'm going to go for something that would be lower down on the maybe pay grade or experience level. But how do I get through? Part of getting through was using my network. How can I be introduced to people? But I think that was one big misconception, that just because the role is below what I feel my top level experience is, doesn't mean I'm going to get that role, because I've had firms say, well, you're a bit too experienced for this. I'm worried that you will then come and take my job. Now, that's a failing of the hiring manager or the manager, who would be my direct, manager, because they should always look for bringing people in who have skills they don't have and who can do a job better than people can do it already. And it's an honest conversation. What do you want out of this? Well, I want a job. I want to go into a firm where I feel valued, and I want to help that firm grow. Right. But a lot of the times it was, no, you're too senior. You're going to take my role. I'm not going to have you.
I've seen that quite a bit as well with some of the accounts that we've been working with. And I think that's part of it. You'll take my job. And the other part is, as soon as the market picks up, you may leave again. Yes. Because you're being underpaid.
Yeah.
To the former, I heard a saying recently, which I really like, which is A players hire A players, B players hire C players. And that talks to that point, which is, we're going to bring in lackluster people.
That's it.
If we've got lackluster managers.
Another way to phrase it is the A players see other people as collaborators, and the B and the C players see them as competition. So I want to work with people who are awesome. If I'm training for like an ultra run or something, I want to run with people who are faster, who are stronger than me. If I'm playing golf, I want to play with people who have a lower handicap than me.
It's not me. Sorry.
Oh, we'll find out.
I want to play with you.
Yeah. Well, who am I then? I just enjoy playing golf now. But it's the same in the workplace.
Yeah.
I want to hire people who are better than me in certain areas, and then I can help, elevate in other areas. Like maybe you want to become a manager. Great. Well, where are you now? You've had no managerial experience? That's cool.
I think that's the sign of a really high quality leader. And again, I'm not jumping to say that I'm definitely that high quality leader, but when I was in my leadership role with Datto, I would always think, how can I get the best person for this role? And I want to surround myself with everyone. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, at the end of my tenure there, all of my team, all of the best people in their roles were all better than me at their role. Every single one of them.
It's a cool feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just like, I almost made myself redundant because they could run the business by themselves. And that was an incredible feeling. But that's what successful businesses do, is they do look at how can, and the other misconception I think is that those people, those B players, are see they're threatened about their job. But the reality is leadership is looking at them as being a top leader that's got exceptional performance, and their career will actually grow.
100%. And if you get people to be better at parts of your job than you are, it frees you up to do other things, like coach them in the areas that they need to coach, or think about other things the business could be doing that you hadn't previously had the mental capacity to do because you were focused on doing your role. I think to your previous question, one of the other big misconceptions I had when I went into the interview process was it would be quick because it's software firms, and I'd always try to hire quickly. They're using technology, and it couldn't have been further from the truth. It was an over-engineered, painful process from firms that you see the branding and you see how market leading they are in so many ways. Yet it was so painful. And it was a really bad experience a number of times, either too many rounds, or there's always an extra round, or there's just delays because, and I understand the more senior you go in a role, the more senior people need to come in. But that comes back to how can you, if you're hiring, have a structured process so you can get people in the room at the right time. You don't over-engineer it, and you create a great candidate experience. Because that's the thing I think a lot of people forget. You want to get the role done, and you want to get it done nice and efficiently, but find the best person. But the candidate, they're not begging for a job. Like, they have a huge amount of skills. You should be fortunate if they're the right person to have them. So give them a damn good experience during that interview process. Because I want to get into a firm and go, I can't wait to start. Not, thank God that's over. I'm glad I got the job, but I could have started a month ago.
Why do you think it is poor?
I think a couple of points I touched on there that, earlier stage roles, there's no excuse for it being poor because you can get through 2 or 3 interviews very quickly. You very rarely have to involve the head of a country or something. Unless they want to be involved, that's great, but that's their decision. They have to fit into the process. So it's getting senior people aligned. I just think it's the state of where some SaaS industry, some SaaS businesses are, that it's almost a competition to, like, how can we make this seem like the best place? And you've got to go through so many stages to get here and prove your worth because we are that good. And it just over-engineers the entire thing.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've seen this happen with certain clients we're working with, and there's almost an arrogance going, we're so good, you need to prove yourself to us. And actually the candidate is evaluating and they get turned off. They go, you know what, I don't think that I necessarily want to work for someone that wants to put me through this much rigor. Yes. There needs to be humility from both sides and see it as a partnership, and there needs to be co-selling. Yeah. Just like a marriage.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm glad I'm no longer going through, but now I've started my own small business. I have to take all of the learnings from the last 15 or 20 years because I will start hiring. And when I hire, I have to work out, well, what kind of person, what kind of role, what location, but what experience do I want them to have? So when they start, we're in lockstep and they really want to be here because they won't be one of 30 people. They'll be one of 2 or 3 to start off with. And that's a very different dynamic.
I want to ask a question. Reflecting on your experience of interviewing for some high caliber companies, what would be the top 3 recommendations you would give to a hiring team, hiring manager to make the process better?
I would set expectations. Number one, I would set expectations early with anyone who is involved, what is required of them, when it's required of them, and that you want to give a good experience to the candidate so they can't mess you around. They are as responsible to turn up when you tell them and not mess it around as the candidate is to provide whatever's required for that interview process. So setting expectations. I would also have somebody go through that process, whether it's internal who hasn't gone through the hiring process for 3 or 4 years, or a friendly from outside that maybe only 1 or 2 of you know who's going through it, and then get critical feedback after that. Because then you get this honest opinion of, that was too long. No, there were too many stages. I think those top 2 things would help smooth out the process. And then I would just go back right to the beginning and make sure that your screening of CVs, your job application, where you're finding those initial candidates from is as robust as possible. So you're putting people into the pipeline who tick the necessary boxes, bring something extra, because you don't just want the same person every single time. But if you're putting, crap in, crap out type thing. So if you're putting good people in, or they look good and you've screened them, because the screening is more of a administrative role can do that. You give them a process, you give them a number of questions, a checklist, and a little bit of an X factor, then it can feed into, okay, now we really want to talk to these people. If that's an average process, you're going to get average, it's going to blow out, people are going to ask questions, want to see somebody again. It's not a good experience.
I love that. And from my experience, there's a lot of people on the market, and there's a lot of people, like you said, throwing their hat in the ring for roles that they're just simply not qualified for, and they create noise. And if you don't have a mechanism of muting that noise, then the human nature side of us as hiring teams is going to be, we will lose our sharpness through that process. And unfortunately, that was going to impact the experience on the quality candidates as well. So I think it's 100%. A really good point of get your filter in and think about it strategically up front and invest in that.
Yeah, because I guarantee the candidate, if they're good, they're thinking about how to apply for the role strategically. Who in their network knows people at the firm, who's worked at the firm, or can introduce them to someone at the firm. I always did this. Who do I know that can tell me about the culture, the product, anybody I might be interviewing with, what they're like what vibe I will get off them? Give me a little thing about them. Like, are they active? Like, are they an introvert, extrovert? So I can try and engage with them immediately, even if it's only over a 30-minute Zoom. Like, do some research. They're thinking about it strategically. If they're not, they won't get the job because they'll fall over at some point.
And just to put another question together, you've given your tips for the hiring team. What would be your tips, 3 tips to a candidate in this market to give themselves a competitive edge?
Number 1 would be realistic. Like, there are a lot of applications going out. You can't get every job. Just be realistic. Don't get too excited about something, but put energy in, but know where to put your energy. So that's a top one, because it's such a time-consuming, exhausting process hiring. I think number 2 would be, to my point, do some research, not just on the company, but on people at the company, and try any way you can to have a conversation with, or at least get a little bit of information about the culture, somebody who works there, somebody who's going to be interviewing you. Do your background work, because I guarantee they'll appreciate it. And then the third is, if you really want that role, just throw everything into it. But again, be realistic and be critical of the process and the people. If you want that role, but they continually delay the process and, I'm sorry, we've just changed things around. If that's what it's like to get into the company, imagine what it's like when that gets blown up and there's projects running all over the shop and your boss actually isn't there. He's over in San Francisco. Like, that's just not going to be somewhere you want to be. So be realistic about, is this the right role for you? Will you get this role? And do the research into more than just the job, like the culture and the people.
Love it. Thank you. And you've transitioned to a new career as of recently. You've set your own business up. Yes. Tell us a little bit about your business and what you're looking to do and the problems you're looking to solve for people.
Yeah, so towards the middle of last year, I transitioned into the mortgage broking industry. I have had multiple home loans. My wife works for one of the largest aggregators in the industry. So lots of dinner table conversation. And the time was right to move away from software and into my own business. So I think the first thing to starting your own business is how damn scary it is. And so I initially joined another firm to get some training and to just almost ease myself into it. And my thought was, give that 2-3 years and then I'll do my own business. But for multiple reasons, timeline was sped up significantly. So 2 months ago, I made the call that I'm going to launch my own business. So they was like, right, quickly, how quick can we create a brand? How quickly can we spin up a website? And how quickly can I do all of the administrative tasks so I'm ready to go? Because I've got into this, and I mean this 100%, to help as many people as possible kind of take control of the finances in their life so they can lead the life they want to live. Doesn't mean you're a property mogul. It just means that if you want to invest in property, you do it the right way, you get the best deal, and it sets you up for whatever the next step is. So that's why I've got into it. But with that comes all the ups and downs and good feelings and scared, shitless moments of being a business owner, of which soon I will be hiring for people in that business as well, which is another kettle of fish entirely.
Yeah. I'm on that journey with you, brother.
Yeah.
And I just think that if you do the right things, do what you know is right, be a good person, operate with integrity, and the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of confidence in it working out really well for you. So
Thank you.
excellent.
That's
awesome.
exciting.
If anyone does wish to get in touch with you, how can they reach out and learn a bit more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so the company is called Allies of Finance because everyone needs an ally. So it's andrew.alliesofinance on Instagram. I'm doing a lot of content on there. I think there's a space for direct and digestible education in the home loan market. But I'll obviously give you my details you can share with anybody. So I'm open to helping people out or just helping people if they want to have a conversation, because financial stress is a huge piece of everybody's stress right now. There's a lot of anxiety around it. And people often don't ask the questions because they think they should know the answer, and it puts them in a worse position, especially men. We think we should know exactly what we're doing with finances. It's not true.
I know how to spend money.
There you go. Yep. Lisa, my wife, knows how to spend money. But I think it's just having anything from I'll help you sort out a home loan to just like a friendly ear to say, well, what are you thinking of doing? And is it the right time to do that?
Brilliant. Well, look, I've really enjoyed hearing your story, your journey, and the evolution from individual contributor to country manager, from small company to big company to running your own business. And it also is just a reminder that we can do whatever we want to put our mind to. So
100%.
thank you for sharing and inspiring.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.